Let's dive into an overview of the course. What I want to do is give you some insight into the particular theory of change that I'm working with, because I am fundamentally here in service of helping you to self-author your own change. Certainly I can't make you change, but we can create an environment that helps you to drive your own change. Yeah, you're disappointed that I can't do it. Man, if I just, all I needed to do was sign up and I would change. No, and that is part of the process too, isn't it? But nonetheless, we are going to create an environment and help you to lay down some grooves that will support your own personal and professional transformation. And so I want to give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, with respect to the sort of processes that we'll actually be using here, and give you some insight into what you can do moving forward. So this is my integral theory of change for personal and professional transformation. And there's two different elements of this. One is what you can do yourself, and how the rest of us can also contribute. Just so you know, all of the slides that we use today, you'll get access to, so you don't have to write down everything that's on the slides. And I'll send out a PDF afterwards that has all that stuff on it. And so I invite you just to continue to take notes on the stuff that's relevant for you, of course. So first of all, there's this whole realm of internal conditions. You'll hear me using this concept of conditions that you set up around you. And that comes from the whole realm of complexity leadership theory, which basically says that if you want to change a system, including yourself, you can't force it to go from point A to point B, but what you can do is create the initial conditions that support its own organic development. So for example, you can't force a child to become someone that you perceive as great, but you can give them the conditions that allow them to blossom into their own greatness. Things like love and attention, a good education, good nutrition, family support, right? All of those things just create the conditions for consciousness itself to develop organically into its own greatness. So there's a whole variety of different areas here that are really instrumental in helping you to take a leap forward in your personal and professional development. One has to do with a real desire and commitment to grow. If there is not a yearning inside of you to deepen your experience here and to step into a new way of being that helps you to be more of who you are and expresses more of who you truly believe yourself to be, if you don't really have that hunger, then it's difficult for any sort of transformational processes to take root. It's like that's really the fertile soil of your own being. And another big piece of this is a willingness to dive into an awareness of your own inner states. And so much of this course will be looking at, well, what are you actually experiencing in the moment right now? Is there a contraction? Is there some sort of thing that you're pulled into, that you're attracted to? And are you feeling fear? Are you feeling passion? Because as you become more articulate at recognizing your own inner states, then you can become more and more fluent in the subtleties of your inner states. So it's like the more time you spend actually studying the language of your own inner experience, the more vocabulary that you get for the differences and the nuances. And then the beauty about that with respect to leadership is that then you are able to notice it in other people as well, because you can only see in others what you can see in yourself, period. Right? So if someone is having a very subtle emotional experience, you're not going to pick up on it unless you're really attuned into your own capacities and your own inner experiences in a subtle way. Conscious engagement in life's problems. So life is this beautiful process of consistently giving us challenges that are just a little bit beyond what we're comfortable at actually responding to. And so the activity is really to step into that and be willing to work with that. And working at this level of what they call eustress. There's two different types of stress. There's distress, which is this is really out of my comfort zone and I'm really needing to contract to take care of myself. That's unhealthy stress. And then there's eustress, which is just at the optimum edge of your own comfort zone, that it's just challenging you enough. And so trying to stay in that eustress space on a regular basis, moving in and out of that, so you have a little bit of recovery and a little bit of stress, is essentially essential for your own development. So as life gives you those problems, then stepping into it. That's a huge initial condition that you want to set up for your own development. If I'm running away from those problems all the time, then I'm not going to grow. I'm just going to get good at running away. Willingness to construct a new frame of references, a new frame of reference as situations arise. So this is an openness. This is basically saying, you know what, I actually don't know in this situation. I'm not an expert. I'm willing to really get new information. I'm willing to take on a new perspective. I'm willing to kind of try and figure out the way that you're seeing the world. And is there, what can I learn from that? And maybe I can then build upon my own understanding of the world based upon what I've learned from you in the moment. And so, in meetings, it's often tough to do this because we want to come forward with our own expert opinion, but there's great power, as you know, in being able to step forward with your position, but in an open way that you also really are looking to understand their position as well. So this openness and reconstructing the way that you see what's happening is critical also as fertile soil for your own personal development. And then this overall liberal personality that's really kind of willing to challenge the status quo and explore the unconventional. If you have this, you can cultivate this sort of natural curiosity of life, recognizing that kind of all the status quo that's around you was set up by other people in the past, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that way in the future. So these are some of the real inner qualities, this list here, that will support your own personal and professional transformation. And when I'm speaking about transformation here, I'm really specifically talking about the development of your action logic. And we'll get into action logics later on in the course, but that's essentially your worldview and the way that you make meaning out of what's happening outside of you and what's happening inside of you. And that's your worldview essentially becomes more complex as you develop. And so these are some of the things that you can do to help develop and complexify the way that you make meaning, that you have greater access to understanding what's actually happening around you and what's happening inside of you. And as it turns out, the later your action logic is, the more mature your action logic is, the more that's correlated actually with leadership development or leadership effectiveness, meaning that leaders tend to be perceived as more effective if they have developed their action logic. And so this course is really focused on essentially helping you to create the conditions to regularly develop your action logic. Now, there's a bunch of stuff that's external as well that both you and us and the world are responsible for. And this is this next list here, which are just complex environments. So this is being willing to put yourself into complex environments. It's taking on that new challenge at work that seems like it's a little bit beyond where you've ever been before. It's stepping into a relationship that, or a position that you need to take in a relationship that feels a little scary and is a little complex. It's coming to events and opportunities like this sort of course that are really intended to challenge you on a number of different levels. So regularly kind of committing yourself to doing that, that'll make a difference. It also really helps to have a map of the territory of your own development, and that's something that we'll provide for you here through studying the integral theories specifically, and action logic development, and worldview development, and understanding essentially how systems and cultures and behavior and psychology all work together to create the moment that's arising right now. And just basically kind of getting clearer about that and having sort of map of the territory makes a huge difference, because your consciousness essentially goes, oh, so this is the territory that I'm actually engaged in, and now that I can see more clearly where I am and where I can go, then it begins to move in that direction. It's called being psychoactive, meaning the map itself is psychoactive. And so we'll get more into that throughout the course. Having some sort of catalytic community and culture of transformation. So this is really, really critical as you are establishing your life for the next stage of leader or change agent that you want to be, is that you create a community that you regularly have access to that is challenging you to step into a deeper and more complex and more authentic and more present way of being. Because the rest of society will pull you down into sort of the status quo and the average sort of center of gravity of society. And they'll pull you down into the rational scientific way of doing things, or the traditions, or this is the way that we've always done it, or this is what science says, or everything's relative, right? So society is kind of is very powerful to help children and young adults grow into sophisticated, intelligent people today. Here in the West, we have very complex societies. However, it also becomes kind of a glass ceiling, sort of the average center of gravity of society and how much meaning it brings to the moment. And so we see things like gross consumerism and passion for materialism and stuff like that percolate throughout our society, and those sorts of things will be attractors to us unless we are consistently in communities that are challenging us to take it to a deeper level, to ask the why 3 or 4 or 5 times, to step into a more vulnerable space, or to step in with more power, right? So this community that we'll have on a regular basis in person and in the conference calls and online is that container for you. And to really accelerate your own development, you're going to want to have a regular sort of interaction with that. Otherwise, your consciousness doesn't get a chance to explore at a deeper level, right? It doesn't feel safe. It can't be fully met. This is about really creating a community for yourself where you can show up fully with all of who you are, with all of your intelligence, with all of your beauty, with all of your passion, with all of your emotions, with all of your spirituality, and be fully met by someone. And when we're in those spaces where we are fully met as a human being, then there's this freedom and relaxation that we feel that really ignites our capacities to then grow and stretch. Because lots of the time we're not able to show up fully as who we are. And we have to defend, we have to create a mask, a facade. This is my business me, this is my home me, this is my, at the school, talking with the parents me, right? And those are useful, however, and sometimes we have to do that. But having a community where you can just show up as all of who you are and be invited to be even more is really, really critical. So, integral life practice, we're going to move into that next this morning. That's crucial, though, for your development as well. Regularly working on developing your body, your mind, your spirit, and what we're calling shadow, which has to do with your inner dark areas that you're scared of that show up in how you engage with others. And then exemplars, mentors, and cases. So having people that you speak with on a regular basis, whether it's a coach, whether it's a psychotherapist, whether it's a friend, that really can serve for you as a template for how to show up. Like, if you really love the way someone is able to express their power and their confidence in a way that's not challenging, but at the same time really takes a powerful space, then that person can become a mentor for you in that particular area. If there's someone that you're really, that you admire with respect to their leadership style or their parenting style or their ability to really create change, then reach out to them and start creating these mentorship relationships. So that's another critical piece of your own personal transformation. And then you can find case studies of change actions that have happened that have had strong impact. You can work with exemplars in literature or in the world around you and work to kind of model them. But it's all kind of like about you're here, I'm here, we're here, trying to figure out how to be here, right? We're trying to figure out how to actually show up here. And there was no sort of instruction book that came with life that said, this is how you show up as a fully blossomed, incredibly powerful, loving human being. We didn't get those instructions. And however, there's people around us that are doing that in all the different dimensions of life, and we can really step into relationship with them. And it's literally like templating. Is you're like, oh, so that's how they do it, right? That's how they move, that's how they feel inside. Finally, this whole area of immersion in peak experiences and altered states. So this has to do with, this has to do with basically taking yourself into states that you don't regularly go into, whether it's deep states of anger or love or passion and allowing yourself to go there, whether it's deep meditative states. There's also states that can be induced by psychotropics or alcohol or drugs, and to a certain extent, those at times are useful because there's a loosening of the ego that can happen with them, and that's the sort of thing that you would want to do in moderation and in service of your own development. But we will be engaging you in a variety of different state experiences throughout this course, including today, in service of essentially giving you a taste of different dimensions of your being. Because basically what state experiences do is they blow you up into a new space, and then when you come back, you're not quite the same as you were before, because you had this incredibly powerful interaction with someone, or because you had this deep insight or this expansiveness, and those serve as sort of touchstones in our own development. So this is a little bit of a picture of the behind the scenes of what we're working with, and it's based upon the best of what we know from a developmental psychology standpoint about how to serve human development. And it all really needs to be held with a grain of salt, taken with a grain of salt, because no one really knows how to change humans or change systems. But we can approximate that, and we can basically work on figuring it out. And so this is the leading edge of what we know so far, and we'll be using it throughout this course. And I want you to continue to essentially use it for yourself. So let's talk about the framework for the course itself, the different pieces and how they fit together. We'll be coming back to this periodically, but to just give you a sense of where we're working here. So first of all, we start off with conscious leadership for sustainability as really focusing on consciousness being at the center of what we're doing. This is different than other leadership courses or other sustainability work or change agency work, which focus on often the action and what needs to be done. So here's a public policy that needs to get in place. We need to figure out essentially how to institutionalize organic, for example. And so that's the target. Everybody focuses on the target. We want the EU to essentially adopt that everything needs to be organic. I actually don't think that's a good idea, but let's take that as an example. Then the focus is on the external goal. All of the activity of the NGOs and businesses that are committed to that, and government agents are focusing on the target. That's very important to do, and by focusing at an even deeper level, which is on you yourself and consciousness that's arising in the moment, which is influencing everybody that's trying to achieve the target, then you have a deeper leverage point, essentially. You have a deeper access to what's really driving what's happening there. And so by focusing on consciousness, you basically get to see the different worldviews that are playing out in the policy arena, or in your organization, or in the public sphere, in the public dialogue. And you get to go, oh, okay, so there's more of a rational approach to addressing this organic issue. Oh, there's sort of this postmodern approach that's really about taking care of the farmers in Africa. That's really what they care about, right? And you begin to basically see the different patterns that are happening. So not only do you see sort of the consciousness in the stakeholders that you're working with, but also by focusing on consciousness, you become aware of what's arising inside of you. When I step into a meeting and I am contracted and frustrated and tweaked because someone just said something harsh to me, then I either become aware of that and move through it, or I'm just harsh to someone else, you know, or my blinders come on and I'm not actually able to be creative in the moment because I'm so distracted by what happened before. I'm just not paying attention, right? So by focusing on consciousness again, you become aware of what's happening out there at the depth of where people are fundamentally coming from, and then you also become aware of what's happening inside of you in the moment so that you can respond with greater creativity, with greater authenticity, and with the sort of leadership actions that you actually want to emulate. So consciousness is at the center with this particular framework. And then around it, there are some theoretical frameworks that we'll work with, which are integral theory, complexity leadership, sustainability leadership, embodied leadership. Those are sort of the intellectual canon with which we'll be drawing from throughout this course. And there'll be a variety of readings and plenty of access to this stuff that you want along the way. And that's essentially the genesis of where much of this material is coming from. It's the lineage, so to speak, from a martial arts perspective. So there are practices and capacities that are associated with those different frameworks and theories, and a number of them are listed there, but they include things like creating an integral transformative practice, like doing shadow work, which is the 3-2-1 practice, framing and design of an intervention from an integral perspective, working with different worldviews, so really conscious communication. It's a whole bunch of leadership competencies that I just identified in my PhD studies when I looked specifically at how do developmentally mature change agents design sustainability initiatives, how do they engage in sustainability initiatives. So I identified a bunch of competencies. We'll be drawing from some of that, which I'll share with you in just a moment. And then, of course, contemplative practices. So we'll be introducing you to a variety of contemplative practices throughout this course to help you really articulate one that works for you. There's also a variety of tools that you'll be introduced to, and some of these things will be through the reading. Some of them will be briefly touched on. Some of them we'll go more deeply into, but they include things like a way to analyze situations with the quadrants, and working with complexity, and deciding how to respond to complex situations. That's the Kinefin model there. Bob Doppelt's Wheel of Change has to do with leading change towards sustainability in organizations specifically. And then a whole variety of things from there's a whole personal productivity suite that we can introduce you to. Then finally, there's actual conscious sustainability leadership in action. And so we'll be doing that with your own project throughout the course. There will be lots of case studies that you'll get to look at. There will be experientials that we have, and then any individual mentoring in which I'm working with you one-on-one, or Anouk is working with you, or some of the other people in this course that know a lot about these models are able to work with you. And so will be part of this whole process as well, essentially, is that mentoring. So that gives you an idea of the overall framework off of which all of the activities will happen throughout the course. Okay, good. So just wanted to give you a taste of these 15 competencies for conscious sustainability leadership that I identified. I'm not going to walk through all of these with you. We will be working on some of these throughout the course. We don't have time with this sort of initial few months to dive into all of these, and really it's not appropriate to engage in many competencies at the same time to develop. But these are the competencies that I came up with when I did my research on sustainability leaders and how they actually design and engage in sustainability initiatives. And these were sustainability leaders that had been assessed at a very late action logic. So they're very mature in their meaning making and how they understand the world. And so some of the key ones that we'll be focusing on here throughout this course are obviously integral theory and integral reflection. Certainly inhabiting multiple perspectives, helping you to do intuitive decision making and harvesting. And the complexity theory work gets into learning how to dialogue with a system and go with the energy. And then some of the shadow work, essentially, as well as shadow mentoring, will be working on a process called the 3-2-1 process that will help you work with shadow issues with yourself and with others. And so we'll be coming back to this again periodically, saying this is the particular competency that we're working on, and we'll provide you with some practices to essentially help you to drive and develop those that you really resonate the most with where you are now. So here's our initial module plan. For Module 1, we're going to focus on integral transformative practice and quadrants, embodied leadership, and intuitive intelligence. That's our main focus for today. We'll be continuing to work on quadrants and levels. By levels, I mean developmental levels, and communicating to worldviews when we get together next time. Anouk won't be with us next time, and we will continue to do some of the embodied leadership work, though, while she's away, and then she'll be back with us for Module 3, and then we'll take a deep dive into action logics, really do some strong shadow work, and more embodied leadership work, and then Module 4 will round it out with complexity leadership and more embodied leadership work. And there will be lots of little things that I'll drop in along the way throughout this, but this gives you a kind of an idea of the general path, the trajectory that we're on over the next couple of months. And this will all be complemented with readings and videos that you get to watch and audios that you can listen to and practices that you can do and stuff like that to work on these. Each one of these could easily be a long, long process.